Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to dial in. Welcome back to another episode. We're in week 17 of the NFL season. It's your host with the most of football, Google, the big guy himself, Colin O'Callahan. I might be on vacation. Actually, I'm in a hotel room right now on a cruise ship, but you know what? Football never takes a day off. And also, you might be asking, why the heck is Colin wearing a Celtics hat? Well, it's my show. I make the rules. So without further ado, let me share the screen real quick and let's get right into these picks right here. Is it working? There we go. All right, so the first game we got tomorrow afternoon on Christmas. You might be watching the Cavs play the Knicks or the Spurs play the Thunder. That is totally fine. But if you are, a masochist like me and want to watch the NFL on Netflix, then you've got the Cowboys and the Commanders taking place at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And unfortunately, when you look at the three games on the Christmas docket, they're not as compelling as they were in week one. But this first one here, I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan, you're just probably playing for some pride. With the Commanders, you're just hoping what in the world is going to happen because Marcus Mariota got hurt last week against the Philadelphia Eagles. So Josh Johnson will be starting in 2025. Yeah, this is the season that we're in right now. And even better, Jeff Driscoll is backing him up. So the Cowboys, they were down only 21-17 at halftime to the Los Angeles Chargers. It looked like it was going to be a back and forth shootout, but they couldn't score in the second half. The defense was absolutely abysmal. They had no answers for Justin Herbert. They let Amari Hampton have a big game. And offensively, I mean, they didn't have trouble moving the ball. George Pickens had a great game. Dak Prescott still was able to throw for 290 yards. But when you can't convert on 2 fourth down attempts and you pretty much just stall out and you're falling further and further behind, then yeah, you're pretty much going to lose 34-17. So the Dallas Cowboys, they were already officially eliminated from playoffs before then, and now they're just hoping to finish the season strong. The Commanders, they were actually up by 3 at halftime against Philadelphia. They were able to benefit off of 2 missed field goals from Jake Elliott, but at some point in time, the minute the Eagles stopped getting it in their own way, the game was going to get better from there for Philadelphia, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Saquon Barkley was able to run for over 130 yards. Jalen Hurts had an efficient game. A.J. Brown caught 9 passes for 95 yards. And with Josh Johnson, he couldn't really get them in the end zone until garbage time. So those are the situations that both teams are in right now. And yeah, it's not going to be the best game on the week, like on the Christmas docket. But to make a long story short, going to pick the Cowboys to win. They're a healthier team. Offensively, they're better. I actually would be laughing hysterically if this turned into a shootout, and I wouldn't be surprised at the same time because both defenses are just flat out embarrassing. But like I said, for the Cowboys, you're just hoping you could at least win this game for some pride. And with the Commanders, you're just hoping that they don't completely wet the bed in this one. So for a final score, I actually didn't even think this one through. I'll probably just say, Cowboys just win by the exact same score that they lost last week and say they hang on for this one 34-17. So let's move on to this next game here. We got the Lions and the Vikings. Honestly, between the Cowboys game, the Lions game, and the night game between the Broncos and the Chiefs, this is the more entertaining matchup. And that's saying a lot because the Vikings are not going to have J.J. McCarthy due to a hairline fracture. And the Lions have a very slim chance of making it to the playoffs because they lost back-to-back games, not only just to the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, but the week before, they lost the game that they couldn't afford to lose. Let me remind myself with this one against the Los Angeles Rams. So they need to make sure that they win out by any means necessary, and they better hope that the Packers lose out by whatever metric possible, even though the Packers already beat them twice this season. The Lions, they had a close game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were actually tied at halftime at 10, but unfortunately, they left a lot of points off the board. On their second drive of the game, they tried to go for it on 4th down at their 3-yard line, and unsurprisingly, they went for it. It doesn't work out. You could have kicked a field goal to tie the game because they were only down 3-0 at that point, but those were 3 points they left off the board. And then to start the second half, their defense forced a fumble inside the 5-yard line. It was a big break that they got for their offense, and it was still tied at this point. And you're thinking, okay, just get some breathing room and see what happens on that drive. You might be able to take the lead. And instead, Jared Goff got sacked in the end zone for a safety, and they ended up losing the game by 5 points. So let me do the math right here. You fail to kick a field goal on the second drive. You get sacked and let up 2 points on the next one. You might win that game, I don't know, at the very least by a walk-off field goal, but after that safety happened, the Lions, they had to play from behind. Their defense gave up two 45-yard touchdown runs to Jaylen Warren, and the offense, was able to build more momentum and, lead two straight touchdown drives to make it a 5-point game. But at the same time, the final 2 minutes were the ones that really decided that game because the Steelers, they marched right down the field, and the Lions, they forced a field goal right before the 2-minute warning. So you have plenty of time to, at the very least, send the game into overtime. And not only did they force a field goal, but Chris Boswell doinked it. So a touchdown won it. So the Lions were in perfect position to close the deal and win the game. And offensively, they went right to work. They had a hard time running the football. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they were shut down once again. So Jared Goff had to be the hero, and he ended up having a big game, threw over 360 yards and a few touchdowns. But, they go right down the field, and they're all the way at the 1-yard line. And it appeared that the game was going to end with a wide-open touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. But there was a yellow paper on the field. Offensive pass interference. Isaac TeSlaa, the rookie, getting called for a pick play. And I know Lions fans are going to say, oh my gosh, that wasn't a penalty. You just ran into someone else's guy. That's what it's called. That's why they call it a pick play. They actually teach the defender to run into the receiver because the refs are going to call it. And that ends up pushing them back 10 yards. Then another penalty brought them all the way back to the 16-yard line. And all of a sudden, it's 4th down and goal at the 9. And on that play, Jared Goff hit Amon-Ra St. Brown for a completion, but Jalen Ramsey stood him up at the goal line. And then all of a sudden, they ruled that Amon-Ra lateraled it back to Jared Goff, and he was able to take it in for a touchdown. But another penalty was on the field, and it was offensive pass interference again. And if you look at the replay, St. Brown clearly pushed off and extended against Jalen Ramsey because he completely knew what the play was. So when Jalen Ramsey stepped it out, then you pretty much know you have no chance, and he pretty much had to push off at that point. And didn't even matter because the refs called it offensive pass interference. They said the play was not reviewable. 0 seconds were left on the clock. Game was over. Steelers win. They clinch another winning season. Lions go to 8-7, and their playoff hopes are in serious jeopardy. The Vikings, that game against the Giants should not have been close by any metric possible because the only touchdown that the Giants scored that game was off a scoop and score, thanks to a strip sack from Brian Burns. There were 21 total penalties, 9 total sacks. J.J. McCarthy, he ended up getting hurt, so Max Brosmer had to play for pretty much the entire second half. But to Minnesota's credit, their offense at least showed a pulse, and they did the bare minimum, which was A, score a touchdown, and B, just not get in their own way through the rest of the game. And it was not great at all, but they still got, a decent amount of yardage. Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson were able to get 80 total yards. Max Brosmer didn't completely crap the bed like he did in his first start against the Seahawks. And the defense just really took command of the game from start to finish. They held Jackson Dart in the entire game to just 33 passing yards. And in the first half, he completed 1 pass for 2 yards. And he threw an interception. And he got sacked 5 times. And when they actually had a chance to win the game, they failed. And they turned the ball over on downs. And a 4th down sack from Andrew Van Ginkel just put it all into wraps. So it shouldn't have been close. The Giants' offense was flat out pedestrian, and it was flat out pathetic. But the Vikings just, like I said, they did enough. And even though they're eliminated from the playoffs, they're still only 1 game back from 500, which is kind of impressive considering that they looked like one of the worst teams in the league just a month or 2 ago. But with that being said, gonna pick the Lions to win this one. I mean, I really just don't trust Max Brosmer at all. I mean, I get that he was completely bad against the Giants, but it's the Giants, okay? They're the losers of 9 straight, and they're absolutely hot garbage. The Lions, on the other hand, they are desperate just to keep their season alive, so they know entering these final 2 games, they have no margin for error whatsoever. So I'm just going to say that the Lions win this one convincingly. I'll just say they get it done 27-10. All right. But it's not going to be as pathetic as this last Christmas game. We got the Broncos and the Chiefs. If Patrick Mahomes didn't get hurt, I would definitely say that this would be at least a little more interesting. But instead, the Chiefs are down to a 3rd-string quarterback, 2 3rd-string tackles, backups at wide receiver, backups at linebacker, and they are just a team that is completely falling apart. I mean, we knew they were going to be absolutely different, without Patrick Mahomes. But last week against the Titans, it just, ugh, it was that bad. I mean, first Gardner Minshew gets hurt and is out for the rest of the season with a knee injury. Then you see Kareem Hunt get absolutely wrapped up in the end zone for a safety by Jeffrey Simmons. And the game got completely worse from there. Cam Ward had the best game of his career. Only 7 incompletions, well over 200 yards, a couple touchdowns, no interceptions. Tony Pollard had his third straight game over 100 yards. And the defense kept Kansas City out of the end zone, just trying to play smart football. And with Chris Olorkian, I mean, he showed some moments, but he got sacked 4 times. They didn't score at all in the entire second half. And I mean, the Titans, for the first time, or actually not the first time, but for one of the very few times this season, they looked respectable. I get it. It was against the Chiefs and a very hollowed roster, but, you know, that was the win that they kind of really needed. So I would say for the Broncos, unfortunately, they're coming off, their first loss in who knows how long, because they were only down by 7 to the Jaguars at halftime. Then they actually tied the game to start the third quarter with a huge run from RJ Harvey. And afterwards, their defense just had no answers for Trevor Lawrence whatsoever. And he ended up having one of the best games of his career, if not the best. 4 total touchdowns, 270 total yards. He did get sacked 5 times and didn't really have much of a run game, but the secondary just had no answers for Parker Washington. They couldn't force a turnover. And the Jaguars went into Mile High and put on a statement performance to keep their first place lead and to make sure that they were one of the more feared teams entering the postseason. And the defense, after letting up that touchdown run, only let up 3 more points the rest of the game. They forced a couple turnovers. They only allowed more points the rest of the half. I think I said that already. But the point is the Jaguars defense really stepped up and lived up to the challenge. And now the number 1 seed in the AFC is still open and up for grabs, because you got the Broncos and the Patriots trying to fight for that spot. And these final 2 weeks are really going to decide a lot of things. But with that being said, picking the Broncos to win this one, I don't think a lot needs to be said for this one. I'm just going to give you a final score here. 30-6. Because, like I said, with Chris Olorkian, there's not a lot of hope left for this franchise. So now let's get to Saturday's festivities here. The first one we got at 4:30 on NFL Network between the Houston Texans and the Los Angeles Chargers. A lot on the line here. And if you're the Broncos, you are paying very close attention to this one, because for the Broncos to clinch the AFC West, they need to win, plus they need the Chargers to lose. And to get the number 1 seed, they also need a Patriot, a Buffalo, and a Jacksonville loss just for them to have home field advantage to the rest of the playoffs. So this Chargers-Texans game is going to be huge. Now, Houston was able to beat the Las Vegas Raiders to get yet another win on the board, but it was a lot closer than it should have been. The offense didn't score a single touchdown until the fourth quarter. Ashton Janney had probably the best game of his career, had a 60-yard receiving touchdown and then a 51-yard rushing touchdown with close to 5 minutes left in the game. So the Raiders were really keeping the Texans on their heels. But to Houston's credit, not only did they force a huge pick 6 that really saved them early in the game, but the offense, they figured it out. They got out of their own way. They got their focus back. And in those final 15 minutes, they looked like, a decent unit, and they made more than enough plays to make sure that the Raiders didn't crush their playoff hopes. CJ Stroud didn't have the best game by his standards. The defense definitely looked shaky at times, but they were able to hold on, and that pick 6 in that fourth quarter really saved them in the end. The Chargers, like I said, they absolutely dismantled the Cowboys. Justin Herbert was flat out phenomenal. The offense was near unstoppable the entire game, and the defense didn't let up a single point after halftime when they let up 3 straight scores in the first 30 minutes. So this is a rematch of the wild card from last year. Justin Herbert has certainly not forgotten the last time he played this team, when he threw 4 interceptions and got absolutely crushed by the Texans, 32-14. And now that this game is in SoFi Stadium, you better hope that, you can get some, comeuppance here. Both teams have absolutely incredibly sturdy defenses, and the offenses are definitely on different trajectories. With the Chargers, as long as you have Justin Herbert and a fully healthy, supporting cast, you're going to be one of the top 10 to 15 units in the league. But the Texans still leave a lot to be desired, which is kind of why I'm giving the Chargers the edge to win this one. They're already in the playoffs, and if the Broncos somehow lose out this game, lose to the Chiefs, which I highly doubt is possible, but next week, no matter what, these two teams are going to be playing each other in Mile High. That is going to decide a division, and that is going to make sure, and that game is going to really decide, who has home field advantage throughout the AFC. But I think I like the Chargers in this one. I think their offense will definitely make a few more plays down the stretch. I mean, I'm counting on CJ Stroud to not have a completely terrible game, but I don't know. Even throughout that win streak, they really have a tendency to let opponents hang around for too long, with the exception of the Arizona Cardinals. So I know that it's going to be a close game, and if you give Justin Herbert the ball back with 2 minutes to spare with a chance to win, I don't care how great your defense is, you better hope that your defense can force another game-saving takeaway to put it under wraps. But I'm going to pick the Chargers to win. I'm going to say they do it off a walk-off field goal, 23-20. All right, now let's get to the other game we got. We have the Packers and the Ravens at 8 o'clock on Peacock. So I know a lot of people don't want to have to pay $30 just to pay for a streaming subscription for one game, but unfortunately, that's just the way it is. The Packers and Ravens are coming off pretty heartbreaking and gut-wrenching defeats last week. Let's start with the Packers because they're the ones at home and they're the ones really fighting for a playoff spot here, or trying to hang on for a playoff spot in this particular case. On Saturday against the Chicago Bears, they were in the lead for 58 minutes. Even with Jordan Love getting knocked out in the first half due to a concussion, Malik Willis had a decent performance. They ran the ball extremely well. He threw a beautiful 32-yard touchdown to Romeo Doubs down the left sideline that put them up, 13-3. The defense didn't give up a single touchdown after the 2-minute, or before the 2-minute warning, I should say. They were up 16-9. Yeah, they were struggling in the red zone, but the defense was playing great. The offense wasn't screwing up, with the exception of the opening drive. And, all they needed to do was get one onside kick, and they would be able to make Chicago burn their final timeouts, and they would need to pick up one more first down to run out the clock. And instead, Romeo Doubs pulled a Brandon Bostic. He dropped the pass, or he dropped the ball, and the Bears fell on it. And all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. The minute the offense went back on the field, they drove right down the field. They go boom, boom, bang, bang, bang. But they still had to go convert on a 4th and goal inside the 5-yard line. Jeff Hafley brings an all-out blitz. They sent everybody to try to sack Caleb Williams. And the one thing you need to do when you run a cover zero blitz, make sure nobody gets wide open. And sure enough, that's exactly what they did, because Caleb Williams, amidst the rush, finds Ja'Day Walker wide open along the right side of the end zone for the game-tying touchdown. And all of a sudden, we were going into overtime. The Packers offense got the ball to start the extra period. They were able to get into Bears territory, but they faced a 4th and 1. Within pretty decent field goal range. It was going to be a 50-plus yarder, but nonetheless, you have Emmanuel Wilson, who was having a pretty solid game, well over 80 yards, averaging, 4 yards a carry. So in that situation, the offense, or particularly Matt LaFleur, you know what? Let's live to fight another day, and let's just see if we can get it a better distance. And instead, we didn't even get a play because Malik Willis completely botched the snap, and the Bears were able to tackle him right behind the line of scrimmage to force a 4th down stop. 4 plays later, Caleb Williams throws an absolute dime down the left side to DJ Moore for the game-winning touchdown. And the Bears officially maintain their first place finish in the NFC North. They haven't clinched it yet. I think they still need one more win against the San Francisco 49ers to get that done. But if the Packers lose, the division is theirs. So there are a lot of big takeaways as to, how the Packers were able to lose or why the Bears won. You can point out, the fumbled snap by Malik Willis, or the botched onside kick recovery, or, the defense falling apart at the end. Bottom line is, the offense made it into the red zone 5 times, and they failed to score a touchdown on all 5 of them. So they have nobody else left to blame but themselves for this, and the Bears just made a few more plays down the stretch. So they were the better team. They're legit, and that is why they only need one more win and a Packers loss to officially clinch the division for good. The Ravens, they were up 24-13 in the 4th quarter. Once again, they had a double-digit lead. They had a win right in the palm of their hands. Their defense forced 3 takeaways. The special teams forced got to stop on a fake punt on a 4th and 10 at the 44-yard line. Derrick Henry had well over 130 yards with a couple touchdowns. Yeah, Lamar Jackson got hurt in the second quarter with a back contusion, but Tyler Huntley was having a decent performance. He was not screwing up. The offense was in really good shape. And, the Patriots offense, they had a few big plays here and there. They had a wide-open touchdown on Hunter Henry. They were tied at 10 at halftime, but it looked the Ravens were going to pull away. And all of a sudden, they didn't. Not only was Drake May absolutely spectacular, he threw a huge 37-yard touchdown pass to Kyle Williams and then found Rhamondre Stevenson in the end zone for a 2-point conversion to make it a 3-point game. But the offense just fell flat. And the biggest reason why, Derrick Henry was not on the football field on the final 2 drives. The best player on the Ravens that day didn't even see the field. And because of that, when the Ravens offense took the field again, when they were down by 3 points, the Patriots defense did something that they only did once beforehand. They forced a punt, and they gave Drake May the ball back with plenty of time to spare in the fourth quarter. And a big 4th and 2 conversion to Stephon Diggs got them within striking distance. And 2 plays later, Rhamondre Stevenson gave the Patriots the lead with a 20-plus yard touchdown. And all of a sudden, the Ravens needed to pull off a game-winning drive just for their playoff chances to, remain intact. And just 2 plays into the final drive, Zay Flowers, for the 3rd time this season, got the ball punched out from behind, loses the football, and the Patriots recover the fumble. And all they needed were 2 more first downs from Stevenson and May to run out the clock and for the Patriots to complete the comeback. So both of these teams are incredibly desperate for a win here. For the Packers, they need to make sure that the Lions don't keep up. And the Ravens, you lose this one, the Steelers have the division, and your playoff chances are officially done. So the Packers quarterback situation is going to be tricky this week because Malik Willis apparently was feeling sore in practice. It was very limited. And obviously with Jordan Love, you have the concussion. So we'll see what happens there. The Ravens, pretty much the exact same thing. Lamar Jackson has the back injury. He missed practice again today. He was already missing practices over the last 6 weeks due to an ankle injury and a mysterious illness. So this is going to be a pretty ugly game. But because this is in Lambeau Field and the Packers don't normally, wet the bed in these types of games, well, except when you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, I'm going to say that, the Packers defense, they take control of this game. They make sure that whoever is starting at quarterback, Lamar or, Lamar, Tyler Huntley, you make sure that this offense is completely one-dimensional. And as long as the Packers don't completely crap the bed like they did the week before, then I think they, still have a fighting chance. So I'm going to say that the Packers win this one 20-10. Okay. Now let's get into Sunday's festivities here. We got the Browns and the Steelers. I'm going to say it. This is going to be a trap game here because the Steelers, since Ben Roethlisberger has retired, has not won a game in Cleveland. And, the quarterbacks that they've lost to include Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Jameis Winston, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it might have been Jacoby Brissett. So this is definitely a trap scenario for the Steelers because you're going up against a pretty good defense in the Cleveland Browns with Myles Garrett needing half a sack to break TJ Watt's record. Offensively, you're not going to have Quinshon Judkins for the rest of the season. So the running game is going to come down to Raheem Sanders and Dylan Sampson, which is not the best case scenario. But, the Steelers, you still got Aaron Rodgers. You still have Jaylen Warren. But unfortunately, you won't have DK Metcalf because he got suspended for the final 2 games because he decided to punch a fan near the end of the first half. And his suspension was upheld. The fan not punished for the time being, but we'll see what the league does in that situation. We'll discuss that at a different time. But the Steelers offense has been absolutely explosive over the last few weeks. You might think, okay, the Browns, they got completely embarrassed the week before against, who was it again? The Buffalo Bills. Actually, they had a close game against the Buffalo Bills. That was a game that they probably should have won and probably should have pulled off the upset, but they turned the ball over twice, and they were down double digits at halftime. the defense played absolutely outstanding in the second half. The only reason why they even scored 3 points in that period was because of an interception at the 25-yard line by Daquan Jones. But the offense down the stretch just couldn't make the plays that they needed to, pull off the upset, and they just made too many mistakes early on for them to even have a chance. So, and that's the one thing you can't do when you're going up against Josh Allen. So I would probably say this. TJ Watt's status is still questionable because he's dealing with a lung injury. Defensively, they've been okay over the last few weeks. The offense has been the biggest reason why they've been able to get over the hump. And with the Browns, I mean, you still have Myles Garrett, but that defense has not been exactly sturdy over the last couple of weeks. So you really don't know what you're going to get from them. You know what? Screw it. I'm gonna be crazy here, and I'm gonna pick the Browns to win this in an upset. The Steelers just always find a way to lose a game to a vastly inferior opponent, whether they only have 2 wins or 4 wins, whatever the case may be. It's pretty much been a pattern for years and years and years, and I feel like inevitably it's gonna happen at some point. So I'll say the Cleveland Browns find a way to win this game. It's 24-17. I'm probably going to be wrong with this one, but who cares? I'm on vacation. Next up, we got the Patriots and the New Jersey Jets. So, already talked about the Patriots game. Drake May had his first career 300-plus yard game. After that completely failed fake punt, I thought, yeah, this game is over. We're probably going to fall apart again like we did in 2021. The Ravens are going to keep their playoff hopes alive, and we're probably going to have to play as a wildcard team because the Buffalo Bills, they might not lose another game. Let's just hope Philadelphia just, finds a way to win that one. But the offense, they never gave up. The defense played out outstanding in the final 10 minutes or so. And, they just showed a lot of resilience. They showed a lot of, hard work. And, they didn't give up and they didn't back down. So I can't discredit them for anything that happened. The Jets, they kept it close in the first half. The defense was able to force, a couple big stops. They forced a turnover on the second play of the game. But eventually, the Saints offense was going to find a bigger groove. Tyler Shuck was able to throw for 300 yards. And Brady Cook, on the other hand, couldn't score at all in the second half and got sacked 8 times. So, I mean, they played scrappy and competitive, but the minute that the Saints offense finally got into a rhythm, it was pretty much just game over. So, to make a long story short, I'm going to say the Patriots win in a blowout. Justin Fields was already placed on IR. Might as well do the same for Tyrod Taylor. The defense still has yet to force an interception. Offensively, it's pretty much just down to backups and third stringers. It just feels like a preseason, and I don't really care how good the special teams is for the Jets. Defensively, they're a patchwork unit, and the offense is just bleh. So I'm going to see the Patriots win in convincing fashion, 40-10. So, all right, now let's move on to the Saints and the Titans. It's not going to be a completely exciting game when you look at the scope and when you look at the stakes here, but the Saints have been absolutely a lot better over the last 3 weeks or so. The Titans are starting to, establish an identity on their own on both sides of the ball. Their defense still has a lot of question marks, but offensively, you can start to see the upside. You can see why Cam Ward was taken number 1 overall. The running game has been a lot better, but the Saints, they have some upside as well. The minute that you give Tyler Shuck a lot more help in the running game and you give Chris Olave a couple more guys to make this passing game a little more lethal, then Kellen Moore might have a legitimate squad on their hands because the defense has been a sneakily good unit. And, you just have to make sure that, you clear a lot of cap space just so you can, get those players. So I'm going to say that the Saints, they continue their win streak. They might be on the road, but I just think that if this is going to be a high-scoring game, then I trust the Saints to make the least amount of mistakes. And I know that the Saints haven't been the best on the road. Let me actually look at right here. So they're 3-5 on the road. They're 3-5 at home. Or 2-5 on the road, I should say. So I think that, they have a lot of adversity that they got to face on their own. But yeah, I'm going to bank on the defense that just had 8 sacks last week on the Jets against the Jets, rather than, the defense that was able to beat up on a bunch of third stringers and backups. So I'll say that the Saints win a pretty close one, 28-24. All right. Next up, we got the Jaguars and the Colts. So the Jaguars were able to have a statement victory against the Broncos. The Colts on Monday Night Football against the 49ers, they just got absolutely blown out by double-digit points. They actually had the lead earlier in the game. They were up 7-0. They had an outstanding opening drive, but the defense just had no answers for Brock Purdy. 5 touchdown passes. Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle had big performances. And earlier in the game, there was a full recovery on a kickoff return that allowed the 49ers to play from ahead pretty much the rest of the night. And despite the Colts, trying to keep it close for a big majority of the game, the 49ers just always found ways to respond. And a pick six to Dee Winters just completely put that game on ice and put it under wraps. So the Colts are pretty much left for dead. Their playoff chances have completely sunk through the tube. And yeah, this is just one of the worst collapses in modern NFL. They were 7-1 at one point, and now they're 8-7. And look at the final 2 games on their schedule. I don't even know what it's going to take for them to win those ones. So Philip Rivers, it looks like he'll be making his 3rd straight start, but even with Daniels fully healthy, you could have just seen the writing on the wall. It's just take out Jonathan Taylor, offense goes one-dimensional, and at some point the defense is just going to be on the field too long and they will wear out. So I think the Jaguars are going to win that game for that same reason. They can run the football extremely well. Trevor Lawrence has been absolutely outstanding over the last 6 weeks, but more importantly, that defense has really been starting to improve. And, they're starting to rise up the statistical ladder in both passing yards and, points allowed. So I really like what I'm seeing from this team. And I think with this win, they officially clinched the AFC South, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they need a win and they need the Texans to lose. And when you look at the Texans loss against the Chargers, we'll see what happens there. So I'll see the Jaguars win pretty much the same way that the 49ers did last week. I don't think it's going to be completely lopsided, but I'll say that the Jaguars find a way to win this one 31-20. All right, now we have the Bucs and the Dolphins. Oh boy. Both teams, we got one team in Florida that's playing absolutely fantastic, and we have 2 others that are just really hard to watch right now. I mean, with the Dolphins, they were already eliminated from the playoffs. They had to start Quinn Ewers last week because they benched Tua. And in the first half against the Bengals, they looked respectable. Quinn Ewers, 10 of 12, 105 yards, 2 big touchdown drives. Joe Burrow, starting to have a little bit of a better game statistically speaking. But the Dolphins were in there. And then just a few plays into the second half, Greg Dulcich lost the fumble, and the game just completely got out of hand from there. The Bengals were able to, force 2 more turnovers after that, which were 2 interceptions from Quinn Ewers, and the Bengals offense capitalized on all of them. Joe Burrow had well over 309 yards and 4 touchdowns, and the Dolphins didn't reach the end zone for the rest of the day until garbage time. And at some point in the fourth quarter, it was 45-14 when they were only up by 3 entering the halftime break. The Buccaneers, against the Panthers, that was the game for them to win and for them to get first place in the division and to make sure that the Panthers didn't have any chance of keeping up. And instead, right on schedule, right on time, they completely take the piss. The offense had 2 big drives at the beginning of both halves. One a touchdown pass to Mike Evans, another a walk-in touchdown for Sean Tucker, and, it gave Tampa Bay the lead. And you're thinking, okay, let's just hope that the defense doesn't, get completely torched and that the offense doesn't get in their own way. And sure enough, that is exactly what happened. Bryce Young had a pretty respectable game, had a big touchdown to Ted McMillan near the end of the first half that gave them the lead, that put them up 13-10 heading into the locker room. And when the Panthers had a chance to win the game, they did that. Tied at 20, he gets them right down the field in a field goal range, sets up a 40-plus yarder for Ryan Fitzgerald to put them up by 3. Baker Mayfield, on the other hand, it took him until the fourth quarter for him to throw for 100 yards. And when he had a chance to keep the game alive, or at the very least close the deal and win it, he threw a horrible back-breaking interception to Lathan Ransom, the same safety that just a week before got called for a personal foul penalty that cost them the game against the Saints. And Carolina is now in first place in the division as a result. And the worst part about that turnover, Mike Evans went one way, Baker threw it in the completely opposite direction. So somebody completely got the play wrong. And now Todd Bowles is, I mean, if you're Todd Bowles, if you don't make the playoffs, you better start calling up a lot of teams and wondering if there's any one of them that is willing to offer him a defensive coordinator position, because there's no way in hell he's probably going to make it to the end of the season if the Buccaneers if they miss the playoffs, let alone lose on the road to a hapless Dolphins team. And there's a very real shot that it happens. But you know what? I'm going to give Tampa the benefit of the doubt and say that they are at least a slightly better football team, and that they won't at least take the crap against a rookie quarterback making a second start in the National Football League. What happened last week was flat out unacceptable. And if you lose this one, you're done. You are flat out done. Actually, let me pull up the scenarios here and see what needs to happen. Yeah, Panthers only need a win and a Buccaneers loss. I don't know if it's gonna happen right away, because the Seahawks are going to Carolina, but yeah. Yep, this is not good. Final score, I'll say they win 26-13. Just ugh. All right, next up, speaking of which, Seahawks and the Panthers. So we already talked about what happened to Carolina. The Seahawks last week, Thursday Night Football, they were down 30-14 to the Los Angeles Rams. The offense turned the ball over 3 times. 2 of them were interceptions by Sam Darnold. We thought at that point, okay, here we go again. The Seahawks are going to completely lay an egg to their arch nemesis. Sam Darnold is going to keep the narratives alive that he can't, win a big game against one of the top teams in the NFC, and they're going to have to be a wild card team. The Rams are officially the best team in the NFL. And all of a sudden, Rashid Shaheed takes a big punt return to the house, and it's only a 1-score game. The Rams punt the ball. They go 3-and-out the next drive. 2 plays later, A.J. Barner, wide open touchdown. And then the wackiest, wildest 2-point conversion play happens. From a surface, you might think, okay, it's just a simple screen pass to Zach Charbonnet that got batted down. The Rams are still up by 2. But upon further review, it appeared that it was a backwards pass that rolled its way into the end zone. And Zach Charbonnet, with the presence of mind, picked it up in the end zone, and it tied the game. Now, Sean McVay and Puka Nacua want to whine and complain like, oh, that has never happened. That was the one that lost us the game. How dare the refs for making this call? There was 6.5 minutes left. Okay, there was plenty of time for either team, really, to win the game in the final minutes of regulation. Actually, the Rams had a chance to kick a field goal with, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 minutes left, and they pulled it wide right. The offense couldn't really get anything done in the final minutes of regulation, but the defense made enough plays to send it into overtime. The Rams offense got the ball to start, and it didn't take too long for Puka Nacua to get free over the middle for a 41-yard touchdown to put the Rams up by 7. And then Sam Darnold got the ball back, and you didn't really know what to expect. But Jackson Smith-Njigba and Cooper Kupp made 2 incredible sideline catches to get the Seahawks well within field goal range. And all of a sudden, it's 1st and goal inside the 5-yard line, and Darnold throws a perfect dart in the back of the end zone to Smith-Njigba. And Mike McDonald goes for 2 and plays for the win. And after a couple timeouts, the ball gets snapped, and Eric Staubert is wide open for the conversion. And the Seahawks win one of the best games of the entire NFL season. And it was by a slim margin, too, because Kobe Turner was this close to batting the pass down. So the Seahawks now hold the number 1 seed in the NFC. They control their own destiny. They don't have any, actually, they need a win, a Rams loss, and even a tie between the 49ers and the Bears for them to get the NFC West and the number 1 seed. For the division itself, they just need the 49ers and the Rams to lose if the Seahawks are able to beat the Panthers. And I think they could do that because I'm probably jinxing them, but listen, I like the Seahawks defense a lot better. The Panthers are definitely a lot better on both sides of the ball, but with Sam Darnold and Bryce Young, you never really know what to expect for both of those quarterbacks, and I think that both have exceptionally, talented supporting casts. I got to go with the Seahawks here because they just have more continuity and they have a little more experience. I think with the Panthers, I don't know. I still think that, I think for the sake of drama and for the sake of chaos, that it's just good that the NFC South, whoever wins that division, is just going to come down to that final game at Raymond James Stadium. So I think that the Seahawks are going to win a very close battle here, 26-23. I think it just comes down to the quarterbacks here. They're both clutch in the final minutes, but I just, between Jackson Smith and Ted McMillan, I got to go with JSN here. It could really go either way, but that's just how I feel at the moment. So next up, we got the Bengals and the Cardinals. The Cardinals just always find a way to, either get blown out or always come up short in the fourth quarter. I mean, they had a winnable game against the Atlanta Falcons, but the offense, with the exception of an incredible catch from Michael Wilson, just couldn't score. Like, they settled for a bunch of field goal attempts. Two of them sailed wide from Chad Ryland. And, they just, in the fourth quarter, once again, they had a chance to, keep the game alive. And Brissett, right on schedule, throws a back-breaking interception. And I get it that the defense didn't play great themselves, but offensively, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Michael Carter, and Elijah Higgins getting wide open on almost every single play. And yet you only settle for, 6 field goal attempts, and you only get 19 points? Are you kidding me? And you were up 10-0 early on, and you were tied at halftime, and yet you only scored 3 points in the second half. So at this point, I pretty much lost all my faith and trust in the Cardinals. At this point, I'm just going to go with the Bengals here because, A, you got the better quarterback. You got a way more dynamic offense. And defensively, both of them are going to be very challenged. But, I mean, like I said, as long as you got Joe Burrow, you always have a fighting chance, especially when you're at home. So I'm going to say that Cincinnati Bengals win. A very close game here, 34-31. All right, next up, we got the Raiders and the Giants. We got the tank bowl of tank bowls. Who will get the number 1 overall pick? The worst team in the AFC or by far the worst team in the NFC? Knowing that Brock Bowers is on IR, I'm probably going to go with the Giants here and say that they screw up their chances for the second week in a row. Matter of fact, I'm going to say that Jackson Dart has one of the best games of his career. You know what? I'm going to be even more torturous there. I'm going to say that they win this one 38-20. You know why? Because the Raiders don't have their best pass catcher. It's pretty much going to be Ashton Janney or bust. The Raiders' defense is Max Crosby or bust. And more importantly, the Giants have a ferocious pass rush that could really feast on one of the worst O-lines in the league. So when you're going up against a quarterback that is tied for the league lead in interceptions, then I think that the Giants can, expose a couple things that, will cause the Raiders to have a few headaches. So Giants win this one 38-20, and the Raiders will officially win the Tank Bowl. So there you go. All right, now we get to a more competitive game here. We got the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Buffaloes need to win this game to keep their division hopes alive and to, make sure that it comes down to the final game of the season. The Eagles have already clinched the division. They don't have anything else to play for. The Patriots need a win and a Bills loss for the AFC East. And trying to see if I missed anything. I already talked about the Steelers winning and the Ravens losing to get the division. Yep. Texans need a win or they need a close loss to clinch a playoff berth. I think that's already going to happen. But Eagles have already clinched. The Bills are still playing for something, even though they already have a playoff berth. The Bills barely beat the Browns. Their offense was not good in the second half at all. James Cook had 100 yards by halftime, but only had 17 the rest of the way. Josh Allen only completed 6 more passes for 44 yards after halftime, after only throwing 1 incompletion in the first half. But the defense, they forced a couple big takeaways. They forced a few big stops down the stretch, and they were able to do just enough to win a very tightly contested game on the road. And yes, they probably should have won by double digits if it weren't for a bad drop by Dawson Knox, but it should not have even been that close to begin with. So, the Eagles have been undefeated against Josh Allen since he's been in the NFL. But you know what? Josh Allen is at home. And if you're in a win-or-go-home scenario with a division title on the line, there is no margin for error at this point. The Bills are one of the worst defenses against the run. I would expect the Philadelphia Eagles to give Saquon Barkley a heavy workload in this one. And if you're Jalen Hurts, you need to be the biggest reason why the Eagles win this game. And you need to be the better quarterback over Josh Allen. Because we all know Allen is going to do whatever it takes to win. I don't care how good that Eagles defense is. With Allen and James Cook, you can't let them hang around. And more importantly, you cannot make one single mistake that gives them that perfect chance to seize the momentum here. So I'll say this. The Bills are going to be favored to win this one. They should win this game, but I'm not going to pick them. I'm going to think that the Philadelphia Eagles make enough plays on the defense, especially down the stretch, and maybe a couple of times early on in that game to make sure that they are playing with the lead for most of the afternoon. But more importantly, I just do not trust the Bills defense at all. I think that I know that they're going to do whatever it takes to sell out Saquon Barkley, but the secondary still leaves a lot of issues. I've never been a big fan of their pass rush. I know that, the O-line is still banked up, but Lane Johnson is most likely going to be back into the fold. And when we have that happening, then I think the Eagles offense, as long as they don't screw up, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape. So I'm going to say that they win a very close game here, 30-27. All right. Oh, I didn't even click this one. There we go. Sunday Night Football, we got the 49ers and the Bears. The Bears are in control of their destiny. They only need one more win to clinch the NFC North, and or if that doesn't happen, they just need the Ravens to beat the Packers. The 49ers, they are still in the race for the number one seed in the NFC and for the division title. So they already clinched the playoff berth. They don't have anything really else yet. But if they get a win against Chicago, then their home game against the Seattle Seahawks, that's going to be for all the marbles here. And more importantly, with the Rams, they got a Monday night game against the Falcons, and they got to play the Cardinals the week after, and you expect the Rams to win that one. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm going to pick the 49ers to win this one. They're at home, and I like the Bears. I like how they've been playing on both sides of the ball. I've given them a lot of flack over the past, month or so, but they find ways to win. Their defense is very opportunistic. They can run the ball extremely well. Caleb Williams, whatever the game is on the line, he's going to make the plays to win the game instead of, costing them in the end, with the exception of that Packers game in Lambeau Field. But I think with the 49ers here, this is going to be a huge challenge for Chicago to overcome, because you got to figure out, how am I going to slow down Christian McCaffrey? How am I going to stop Brock Purdy? But more importantly, what wrinkles is Robert Saleh going to throw in my way? Because Caleb Williams, he's going to have a tough time, trying to figure out, how to handle that pressure and figure out which matchups to exploit. Because Robert Saleh is still one of the best assistant coaches in the league, and there's no question that in the next year or two, he's going to, be back in head coaching circles. So I think this is going to be another close game, but I think that because this is in Levi's Stadium on a big primetime stage, I think that the 49ers offense, they're just going to make just a few more plays in the fourth quarter, because the Bears, they don't really do a great job at stopping the run. And if you can't force a takeaway, then, you can really only do but so much. So I'm going to say the 49ers win 27-24. All right, last but not least, we got the Rams and the Falcons. I'm just going to cut this short. This is going to be an easy win here. I mean, you got the MVP in Matthew Stafford, one of the best offenses in the National Football League, still arguably the best team in the NFC and in the NFL, going up against a hapless Falcons team that, has done well over the last couple of weeks, but against legitimate, scary foes, that they're going to get overwhelmed, with the exception against Buffalo and Tampa Bay. I just think that the Rams, just like they were against the Cardinals a few weeks ago, they're just going to play extremely motivated. That they're still seething from that previous loss, and they're just going to be absolutely explosive on both sides of the ball. I'll say the Rams win 35-9. And with that, the NFL playoffs, or the Week 17 picks, I should say, are officially locked. And I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. No, I think I got all the playoff scenarios out of the way. So let's see the standings now. So the Broncos still have the number one seed. The Chargers are at number 5. Surprisingly, 5-0 in the division, but still they're a wildcard team nonetheless. The Patriots would be the winners of the AFC North, while the Bills would be in a wildcard spot. The Jaguars would hold first place in the AFC North, while the Texans would hang on as the 7th seed, and the Steelers would be the winners of the AFC North. In the NFC West, number 1, Seahawks, 49ers, and Rams would be tied, but the 49ers hold tiebreaker for whatever reason, because their percentage against the division. NFC North, Bears and Packers. Those are the two teams. The Lions would officially be eliminated. Eagles would take the the Eagles would take the East, and the Panthers and the Bucs would still be tied for the South, but the Carolina Panthers would hold tiebreaker. So that does it for another episode. Make sure you like and subscribe for additional content. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.